Now, from the Pope John Paul II Cultural Center in Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome to The World Over Live, and thank you so much for being here. Lots of news happening, not only in the U.S., but around the world, and with a show called The World Over, we'll try to bring as much of it to you as we can. Tonight, we'll explore the ever-shrinking Christian presence in the Holy Land with Father Peter Vasko, the president of the Franciscan Foundation for the Holy Land. And later, joining us for an update on the latest from the United Nations is the president of CFAM, the Catholic Family and Human Rights Institute. Austin Ruse is here. If you'd like to weigh in on the matters discussed this evening, send us an email. We're at worldover@EWTN.com. But first things first, here's the brief news from the world over this week. Science tops the news with reports of two recent developments in stem cell research. A team at Children's Hospital in Boston announced a stem cell breakthrough that induces ordinary skin cells to exhibit regenerative properties virtually identical to those of embryonic stem cells. The new technique is also less prone to cancer risks that were prevalent in previous skin cell studies. This is the most promising alternative yet to pluripotent stem cell research that does not involve the destruction of human embryos. And doctors in Australia found a way to rapidly grow life-saving stem cells already being used in treatment. Previously, patients suffering from leukemia and a range of other disorders would have needed stem cells harvested from bone marrow or the umbilical cords of newborns. But now those scarce regenerative stem cells can be grown in a lab. And the Nobel Prize for Medicine was awarded this week to the man who discovered what became known as in vitro fertilization. Cambridge professor Robert Edwards received the honor and the $1.5 million prize as the co-inventor of the in vitro fertilization method more than 30 years ago. He actually created the first Petri dish fertilization 10 years earlier, in 1968. The Vatican and pro-life activists derided the honor, noting the technology destroys human beings in the embryonic state and should be considered an abuse of science. IVF technology fertilizes several eggs at once outside the womb. The overwhelming number of the nascent human lives created are frozen, destroyed, aborted, or die naturally during the IVF process. Virtually all embryonic stem cell research comes from the harvested cells of embryos left over from the IVF process. An interesting side note here, before the announcement, reports were that Professor Shinya Yamanaka of Kyoto University was the favorite to receive this year's prize. He was the researcher who recently discovered how to make stem cells from ordinary skin cells, thus enabling scientists to avoid ethical problems with embryonic stem cell research. Instead, the Nobel Committee awarded the prize to the scientist whose discovery led to the virtually unlimited supply of human embryos that are now being destroyed and used in stem cell research. From the historic mafia stronghold of Palermo, Sicily this past weekend, Pope Benedict XVI spoke out against the evils of organized crime and encouraged Sicilians to find refuge in the church. The Holy Father made the comments as he paid tribute to Father Pino Puglisi, who was gunned down by the mafia in 1993. Father Puglisi stirred the consciences of Palermo's poorest and most heavily mobster-infested neighborhoods. Sicilians, he said, must not be afraid to oppose evil, explicitly condemning organized crime and calling the mafia a road of death incompatible with the gospel. He invited Sicilians to take courage in the joy and strength found in the big family of the church. Who said Britain's secular society wasn't open and friendly to religion? Earlier this week, the British government formally recognized Druidry as a charitable religion. Best known for their Stonehenge pilgrimages during the solstices, Druids worship the forces of nature and spirits they believe arise from places such as mountains and rivers. The Druid network, which is comprised of a whopping 350 followers, can now receive tax-exempt donations, just as the Church of England and the Catholic Church do. To be a recognized religious charity in England, an organization is required to believe in a supreme entity with a degree of cohesion and seriousness and have a beneficial moral framework. Druids insist that they have no dogma. Instead, their gods are things like the moon, sun, rain, thunder, love, and fertility. And the new U.S. Supreme Court term commenced on Monday, and as has been tradition for more than 50 years, the Catholic Church hosted the annual Red Mass for jurists and lawyers at the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle. 5 of the 9 justices, as well as Vice President Joe Biden, attended the Mass. Vatican Archbishop Augustin de Noia, an American, indirectly denounced legalized abortion, euthanasia, and same-sex marriage at the Mass. He said laws should reflect divine principles, including the inviolability of innocent life from conception to natural death, and the sanctity of marriage. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was one of the 4 justices who did not attend the Red Mass. Several years ago, she vowed never to go again because, quote, the sermon was outrageously anti-abortion. Well, it wouldn't be the feast of St. Francis of Assisi without the now traditional blessing of pets. Around the world, pet owners brought their beloved animals to their local Catholic churches for their blessing. St. Francis is the patron saint for animals. After celebrating Mass in the Philippines, Father Mickey Martin, I almost said Mickey Mouse, took his turn blessing and sprinkling holy water. Dozens of cats and birds, even this 4-foot iguana got splashed. Ming Sandig, its owner, said the iguana is part of the family and they love him, so it's important to have him blessed as well. I suppose even ugly, poisonous reptiles need love and the occasional blessing. The city of Canton, Ohio, is honoring EWTN foundress Mother Angelica by creating the Mother Angelica Memorial Corridor. I realize the wording is a little odd since Mother is still very much with us. Nonetheless, the 14-block corridor on Market Avenue will pass by the Sancta Clara Monastery, where Mother Angelica lived for several years before founding a new monastery in Birmingham and eventually founding this network. Today, EWTN is the world's largest religious media outlet in the world. EWTN will pay tribute to Mother Angelica and honor her at its family celebration this weekend, October 9th and 10th, at the Canton Civic Center. The event is free, so if you're in the area, drop on by. Yours truly will be there, and if you can't make it, check out EWTN.com for broadcast times and hours. Now, remember, if you find yourself visiting D.C. on a Thursday night, come on down and see us. Drop us an email at worldoverdc@yahoo.com, and we'll reserve a seat for you. When we return, Father Peter Vasko on the possibility of peace in the Holy Land and the dwindling Christian population. The World Over Live continues in a moment. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. My first guest is no stranger to the show. He's currently the president of the Franciscan Foundation for the Holy Land, an organization dedicated to giving voice to the Christian minority in this embattled region. He also serves on the board of the Franciscan Custody of the Holy Land. He's actively involved in the international diplomatic community in Jerusalem, here to tell us the latest on the plight of Christians there and the prospects for peace in the Middle East. I'm joined by Father Peter Vasko. Father Peter,
very
welcome
nice
back
meeting you,
to the
Raymond.
program.
Good to see you.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
Tell me, let's start with the situation of the population of Christians in the Holy Land. It is ever dwindling. What is the status now?
Right now, there are about 160,000 Christians out of 9 million people. And the 9 million include Israel proper and the territories. So it is it has been that way for a while, but it's interesting. Back in 1900, it was 13.2% of Christians living there. Today, with this particular number, it's only 2%. So it's going down. And so this is why, as you well know, the foundation was established to stem the Christian exodus and to assist our Christians in humanitarian programs.
Now, the Franciscan Foundation for the Holy Land has an array of outreach and programs. I want to talk about those in a minute. My question is, who is choosing to stay here? A lot of the young people are leaving, yes?
Well, that's exactly right. But we have found out that the solution into motivating our young people, young Christians, to stay in the Holy Land is through higher education, through college. And the Franciscan Foundation, one of its biggest successes has been the college scholarship program, where we give free 4-year scholarships to Christians who are economically marginalized but have great academic ability. They have to maintain a B average in high school, and we have a scholarship board here in the United States that makes those particular choices of Christians. And it's interesting, 70% of the students who graduate are now engineers, pharmacists, lawyers, educators, engineers, and these were the young people who were going to leave, and now they're staying. It's a small dent, but it's beginning.
Is there a requirement that they stay in the Holy Land for a period? They
sign a contract for 3 years that they will stay in the Holy Land. We assist them in finding employment, etc., but 70% of them are getting jobs as professionals, and they're remaining. The other group of people are students who do not have the money to go to college or do not have the ability, but want to learn labor skills like becoming a plumber, electrician, a carpenter, a metal worker. We have started a new program for the vocational technical, and this, starting as we speak, there were 30 young Christian students who are now going to be coming within a 2-year period, have great labor skills in those particular fields.
Tell me what else can be done to inspire people or encourage them to stay. What else are you all doing? Well, besides scholarships?
Well, the fact is that there's a lot of humanitarian programs. As education, as I said, education is very important. We're assisting, for example, with the child sponsorships, the kids in Bethlehem who have no
troubled backgrounds,
and that's the boys' home, etc. We started the Children Without Borders, which is a big sports program to give these young people an outlet, a physical outlet, in 4 cities, and the last one was in Gaza. So we pay for the salaries of the coaches, we pay for their transportation, uniforms, etc., etc. And these are all different ways of, helping our Christians to make life a little bit easier there.
Tell me about the divisions between the Christian communities there. Because people imagine, all the Christians are together. There's a lot of divisions, right?
Well, 80% of the Christians that are there are split into Maronites and Roman Catholics. The Maronites in union with Rome. There are about, I would say, 40,000 of the Maronites and 20,000 of the Roman Catholics. On the other side, you have all the Orthodox churches, the Greeks, the Armenians, the Coptics, the Syrians, and they make up the other part. There's about 5,000 of the mainline Protestant churches at this present moment in the Holy Land. So that's really the breakdown of the 160,000 that we have.
Is there unity, though, around particularly this outcry and concern about the Christian identity? I know some of the evangelical churches, they're far more focused on Israeli independence, and they really don't pay a lot of attention to this dwindling Christian population.
Well, this question of the dwindling population has only been basically in the news for the last maybe 8 or 9 years. The Catholic Bishops' Conference had made statements, they've came to the Holy Land, etc. But the majority of local Christians, Catholics, for example, they have no idea that there's a Christian immigration. And the fact is, this is what the foundation is attempting to do, is to raise awareness as well as funding to let people know what is going on and to assist those young Christians who are thinking of leaving to stay.
And I mean, the idea is you don't want this to turn into a museum. You want it to be a living, thriving community and a place that not only respects the holy sites, but is actually a living witness to the faith.
Well, the church is not the building, as we know. It's, as you just said, it's the people. And we need that living, worshiping community to validate its existence in the Holy Land. I mean, these people have been the guardians of Christianity since the first century. and they've had a long, long history in that region. And in fact, it's interesting because they, of course, predate Islam, which was in the 7th century. So they have a stake there. They have a stake in that whole region of the Middle East.
Let's talk for a moment about the political situation. How does that affect this question of Christian exodus?
I don't think it really, in a sense, look, people are leaving because of economic and political situations. The political situation is not really becoming more advantageous to the Christians. The Israeli government, in general, looks at the Christians as Arabs and as Palestinians, and hence suspicious. Whereas the Muslim militants look upon the Christians as pro-West and traitors to the Islamic cause. So you have this continuity of people that are on both sides, and our people are being squeezed out. They do not have any world governments or world organizations assisting them, and they're the ones who are leaving. But we're seeing that through these programs, little by little, these young people are now staying. They have an opportunity for a job, a hope, that and raising up their human dignity as individuals in that very difficult country called the Holy Land.
And you all provide both housing, education, outreach, psychological care in the case of these children.
Franciscan Family Center in Bethlehem.
So, I mean, it really is...
We're covering the whole gamut, Raymond.
You're hitting all the social service... you are the social service net for this community.
Well, under the headship of the custody of the Holy Land. That's one of the arms of the custody, the Franciscan Foundation.
Let's talk for a moment about the possibility of peace in the Holy Land. We hear this every day. Peace talks just broke down, which I want to talk about in a moment. When you hear they're having another summit for peace in the Holy Land, you think what?
I'm quite frustrated. I've been there 25 years. There's been about 15 accords, agreements. None of them have worked. And I think all of this is simply political posturing. The recent event at the White House with the 4 or 5 leaders together with Netanyahu, unfortunately, I thought that would resolve the problem of the lifting of the moratorium on the rebuilding process of settlements. I don't know if that was discussed or not, but apparently it wasn't, because now they're saying, Abu Mazen is saying, well, they're starting the process of new settlements. We're not going to be bothering. We don't want to deal with them in direct negotiations. So you have two sides, people looking at two sides of the coin, how they look at it. The Israeli people looking for security, and the Palestinian people, the good ones, I'm not talking about the militants, the good average Palestinians, are looking for a basic freedom. So there's the dichotomy, there's the difficulty and the conflict that continues to exist. I don't ever think there's going to be peace in that land.
What aren't we seeing that contributes to this inability to even sit down together? Are there other issues here? I read about water being a concern, cutting off water to one population and other diverting it elsewhere. I mean, you read all of these things in addition to the settlement question. Settlements being in the West Bank, the Israelis are allowing settlements in this disputed area between Palestinian territories and Israel proper.
Well, if you talk from a scriptural standpoint, as we all know, when Haggai had conceived Ishmael through Abraham, Ishmael sort of was, and Haggai were told to leave, were exiled, whereas Isaac became the next generation. Most Arab historians hold that because their brothers, Ishmael was the father of the Arab nation. Therefore, they were brothers. They're both Semitics. And the problem grew from there. And then the real problem here since 1947 has been the ownership of the land. That's the crux of everything you're talking about, reading about ownership of the land. Each one claiming this is their land. No, this is my land. And I think from that standpoint, the Israeli people, the Jewish people feel they have the history that this is their land. Whereas the Palestinian Arabs feel that their history has not been told. They've been prevented from telling their side of the story. So you have this
How do you resolve this? Or is this has been going on for centuries and
I really feel personally it'll never be resolved. We have to direct negotiation. You have to continue negotiating with both sides. I mean, you can't just say there's no hope. There is some hope, hopefully, but It's very hard at this point in time after you so stated the many agreements that were made, and you just get so frustrated after a while. You put so much hope into it, and then it's completely shattered.
At the intercession of an Iraqi archbishop, the Pope has called from October 10th to the 23rd a synod for the Middle East. This is a little preview of that synod. Take a look, and then I want you to react, Father.
Many hopes and expectations are associated with this synod, which will be held between October 10th and 24th, on the theme, the Catholic Church in the Middle East, Communion and Testimony. It was in Cyprus that Pope Benedict XVI handed over the Instrumentum Laboris, the document published in 5 languages that is intended to guide the proceedings. We speak to the Secretary General of the Synod of Bishops, Archbishop Nicola Eterovic. So this synod dedicated to the Middle East is a sign of hope, because it's the first time that such a synod has been held in the history of the Church. The Universal Church, under Pope Benedict XVI, wants to concentrate on this precious portion of the Catholic Church. The Middle East is a special land. It's the Holy Land. It's the place where Jesus was born, where the Church was born. So for the Universal Church, this gives it an important dimension. The emigration of Christians driven out by the difficult situations in the Holy Land, Iraq, Lebanon and Egypt, ecumenism, the role of the faithful in Middle Eastern society, these are just some of the themes that will be examined. The Instrumentum Laboris closes with the hope that the light of faith may filter through the difficulties and become a leaven of peace for these lands.
That's a preview of this upcoming synod. Father, your hopes for this, some of the points that they're going to raise, the growth of fundamentalism, how active and present is that fundamentalism, Islamic fundamentalism in the Holy Land?
In Israel proper, it's there. It's an undercurrent, but it has not really surfaced with a militancy as you see in other areas. As you know, the Synod is discussing the vulnerability of 9 to 10 million displaced Christians in the Middle East. But what are the reasons why they're displaced? Well, if you have, for example, the Lebanese war 13 years ago, where Christians were fighting against Christians, you have an exodus. If you're speaking about religious and being religious and being intolerant to other religions, you have that problem in Iraq. If you're speaking about persecution of Christians, you're speaking about Egypt. If you're speaking about discrimination, jobs, and housing, you're speaking on political things, the wall, you're speaking about Christians leaving there. So every country that they're discussing is showing why are they leaving. Now, how to get them back is another story, because it's a very complicated, intricate situation. A lot of it's political, right of return, as we have in Israel today in the Holy Land. There's a constant barrage of all that, but that's why people are leaving.
And they'll also be touching upon the plight of Christians, the Muslim-Christian dialogue with respect to reciprocity. Talk about that.
And reciprocity in the sense of?
I imagine in the sense that in Christian lands, Muslims are accorded certain rights. They may build their mosques, as we're seeing this big debate unfold in New York. But in some of the Islamic lands, in Saudi Arabia, you can't build the cathedral.
That's true.
So I think that's what they're looking for.
This is sort of very unfair on the part of those particular countries that have these so-called rules. As far as Israel, which is my expertise since I live there, there hasn't been too much of saying we want additional mosque or we want the complaint against the Christians. I think it's a problem where people have sort of accepted the situation. And there is a general respect of the three monotheistic religions in Israel. I have never seen people, being very negative to Christians or Christians being negative to Muslims and or Jewish people. They basically, in Israel, get along. It becomes the political situation, the bias that continues to foment the problems we see today. But I don't see any type of problem there among the three monotheistic religions in Israel.
I've been getting a lot of emails about pilgrimages, people going on pilgrimages, and they want to ask, what is the safety situation? Are they safe when they visit the holy sites? And
Extremely safe. If you, I always tell my pilgrims, location, location, location. All of the holy sites in the Holy Land are in East Jerusalem or in Galilee. All of the other sites are in the Israeli quarter, and we never necessarily go. We don't go to the Israeli quarter. You know, there's nothing wrong with going there, but we don't go to, for example, to the. We do go to the Wailing Wall, the Kotel, but it's extremely safe. And I think the media has portrayed fighting in the streets, etc. Gaza is 125 miles from Jerusalem, and all they see perhaps from time to time is the fighting in Gaza. That is not Jerusalem. There's a security barrier preventing militant Muslims from coming in. So, no, I encourage people. This past year I had like 8 pilgrimage groups.
And you took the whole world on a tour with your series when you highlighted various aspects of the holy sites, put people, I think, in touch with that Christian minority and the day-to-day living these people encounter and their world through the series you did at EWTN. Yeah, what was the reaction?
Very positive. People were not aware of the fact of individual people that they never even heard about. They were impressed with the work that the foundation is doing. And, of course, the spiritual side, explaining the holy sites and what they mean to us and their spirituality as followers of Christ. It's been very positive. It's really been selling quite good. And we appreciate you doing that intro.
Oh, well, I'm always happy to help out.
Yes,
I need all the help I can get. Tell me about, quickly in our remaining moments, how did you come to found this organization? You were the founder, right?
Well,
the Franciscan
what
Foundation
happened was I had a marketing degree before I was in marketing and public relations. So I left all the corporate world and I joined the Franciscans, and for 7 years nobody talked to me. It was wonderful. And then I was elected on the board of definitors for the custody of the Holy Land. And as I continued on in that position, I saw a lot of young people coming to us saying, can you help me with a job? Can you help me with a college education? Can you help me with housing? And I said to myself, because they said they were going to leave if they didn't find anything. So I brought this up to the Presidential Council. We discussed. They said, Father Peter, you have a background. Go to the United States and find out what is going on. To cut everything very, very short, we had a lot of positive responses, and we began the foundation to stem the Christian exodus from the Holy Land.
Now, we should tell people this is not to be confused with the Foundation for the Holy Land, which was that organization shut down by the State Department that was funneling money to Islamic extremists. This is the Franciscan Foundation for the Holy Land, a very distinct group.
Yes, that was called the Holy Land Foundation for Relief and Development in Richardson, Texas. And we started with the name of Holy Land Foundation, and then there was confusion in the media, and we immediately took press releases, and because we said what the truth was, we didn't have any more difficulty at all with our supporters. So yes, that's where we changed it, the Franciscan Foundation.
Great. Father Peter Vasko, thank
you
so much
Raymond.
for being here. As always, for more on Father Peter's work and the efforts of the Franciscan Foundation for the Holy Land, visit ffhl.org. ffhl.org. You can also email them at info@ffhl.org. Thanks so much for being with us. On the flip side, we'll talk to Austin Ruse about what's happening at the UN. You won't believe what they've just passed and what they're talking about. Stay right there. The World Over Live continues in a moment.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. My next guest has been keeping an eye on our friends at the United Nations for over 13 years. He helped found the Catholic Family and Human Rights Institute, better known as CFAM. In 1997, he served as its president since 2000. Would you welcome Austin Ruse back to the program? Austin, thanks for being here. Hey, I want to start with the new UN observer, Archbishop Chulikut. Tell us about him.
Well, we first got to know him when he was at the United Nations during the Martino years. And we knew him then as
he was a member of the staff then.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And we knew him then as a very holy priest and very eager to do pro-life work at the United Nations. And then he went off and became the nuncio in Baghdad. which was very dangerous, where he did just enormously important work, including building bridges to Islam. And so we're thrilled that he is returning to the UN.
Yeah, he really comes with an important background and experience that I'm sure will serve he and all of us well.
Yep.
Let's talk about this International Year of Youth that was recently held in Mexico. Now, this just happened in August. People don't pay a lot of attention to these UN conferences. I want to start there. Why should they spend more attention on what's being said and the documents coming out of these UN conferences?
Well, I tell people when they ask me what they can do, I tell them to stay home and take over the school board, and I'll handle the UN. But the reason that people should care about this is that the documents that are produced at UN conferences are used to insinuate themselves into the body politic and also into legal systems. So, for instance, the United States, when the Supreme Court made homosexual sodomy a constitutional right, they cited documents of the United Nations. When they overturned the juvenile death penalty, they cited documents of the United Nations, which we've never even ratified. So that these documents reverberate into the body politic, into our legal system, and so that's why we pay attention, and that's why other people should pay attention too.
And who exactly is voting on these documents?
Well, the member states of the United Nations. There are 193 member states of the United Nations, some good, some bad, some pro-life, some not. Overwhelmingly, though, they're against us on these particular issues of life and family. The real problem is that the documents are first drafted by the radical left, and so even our good guys, like the Holy See delegation, have to negotiate from a document that's almost purely poison. So it's hard to get back to something good from something that's absolutely horrible.
And that's the starting point, and the base is not so hot. Talk to us about this International Year of Youth. When you hear International Year of Youth meeting, a conference, the UN, you think, well, this will be about child care, I suppose maternal care, taking care of infants and raising children properly, basic resources, water and food and those sorts of housing. Is that what this conference focused on?
Well, of course, most people understand that the United Nations is about a radical ideology these days. So most people understand that, no, the conference would not be about those particular things, though they should be.
Okay.
This conference, and it's not just one conference, it's a year. It's the International Year of Youth.
So are there other meetings throughout the year?
There have been meetings going on for about a year. There's going to be meetings going on through the rest of this year, culminating in a global conference on youth. And one of the highlights of the Mexico conference, which was last month, was 300 hand-picked young people, hand-picked by International Planned Parenthood Federation, released a document which they want the UN to adopt. And this document does not mention parents a single time, brothers a single time, sisters a single time. The only mention of family in this document is in the phrase family planning, which of course they all want. So
nice.
they call for...
So it's really about population control again.
Well, and also comprehensive sex education, sexual and reproductive rights for children. It is even more radical than a UN document that governments will negotiate.
And apparently, according to some of the reportage of your personnel who were in attendance,
yes,
the only toys in evidence were apparently sex toys.
There was an exhibition attached to the youth conference, and it was a big exhibition hall, and among the exhibits were an exhibit of sex toys. We have a photograph of a young lady standing at a booth. Two middle-aged men are sitting at the booth, and their booth is decorated with thong underwear. This is at a conference for youth. It's creepy, is what it is. It's creepy. And this was a conference. Wasn't it an unofficial UN conference? It was attended by UN member states. It was promoted by UN agencies. But it was a conference of the government of Mexico. But it's a part of this year-long UN Year of Youth.
Youth, yeah. Really troubling.
Creepy.
And then when you hear there's a manifesto that was produced apparently to redefine gender.
Well, yeah, this is part
this?
of the NGO document that the youth negotiated. And they're calling for sexual orientation and gender identity. They're calling for things that most folks watching us now have never even heard of.
And so what is the point of this? What is the end game? Why would they want to redefine man, woman? Is this... where is this leading?
Well, the immediate reason for this year of youth is because we now have 50% of the world population now are under the age of 25. We're having a kind of youth explosion. And the radical left want to make sure that they capture those young people as young as possible for their side, and certainly to make sure that they don't reproduce. So the immediate reason for this conference is to somehow capture the world's youth, those under the age of 25. Their long-term goal is to insinuate their ideology into every aspect of human life.
And is the gender confusion part of this agenda to keep fertility and population down?
Well, I think it's to encourage just any kind of crazy sexual license that they can think of. I mean, I think that they
so long as contraceptives are on the tables and we're pushing the
and as long as everybody wants to. I mean, there are no rules. It's just everybody has to want to.
But marriage, family, the family unit, that is not a consideration at these conferences, or even...
The UN recently some years ago, celebrated the International Year of the Family by closing down its family office. I mean, they don't really care about
That's lovely. What a celebration. Shuttered. Do not apply. Let's talk about this launch of the Global Strategy for Women's Health, which just took place in September, the end of September.
Yes.
First of all, back up a moment and tell us, what are these Millennial Development Goals? We hear a lot of talk of that. I'm going to play a clip in a moment from Hillary Clinton where she's addressing that. What is that exactly?
The Millennium Development Goals were a small number of goals, reducing poverty, increasing education. I mean, really quite non-controversial things that were developed in the year 2000. It was the largest meeting of heads of state in history. They met again in 2005 to reiterate the goals. They met again recently, this last month, to reiterate the goals again. One of the big debating points of the Millennium Development Goals was the fact that one of the goals did not include reproductive health. So there was a massive global campaign in the year 2005 to get a new goal on reproductive health. They failed. And then they sort of created one on their own on the sly. And now everybody says there's a new goal on reproductive health. And the Obama administration says that they're going to spend $65 billion on reproductive health and maternal mortality. It's really the same old story.
And reproductive health is a euphemism for what?
It's a euphemism for abortion. Now, the UN General Assembly has never agreed that reproductive health includes abortion. But UN agencies get to do whatever they want to. The UN bureaucracy gets to say that reproductive health includes abortion. The Obama administration says reproductive health includes abortion. They're going to spend $65 billion on legalizing abortion around the world.
Here, I want to play this clip for you. Here is the American Secretary of State Hillary Clinton at this UN conference, the launch of this women's health initiative, and she makes this case. Listen.
This 5-year alliance aims to increase access to family planning and reduce maternal and neonatal deaths in South Asia and sub-Saharan Africa. Our effort will contribute to the goal of increasing access to family planning by 2015 for 100 million women who now lack it.
What is she saying there? What exactly is this?
Here's the news about what she's talking about, using maternal deaths as a wedge to increase legal abortion around the world. That's what she's talking about. But the really good news, and I talked to you about this when I was last with you, is that there's been a new report from the University of Washington in Washington State, which looked at global maternal mortality figures, and they have determined that real maternal mortality figures are under 300,000 a year. Now, for years, people like Hillary Clinton, UNICEF, UNFPA have said maternal mortality figures are well above 500,000 a year. So why is that important? That's important because their number one answer for ending maternal mortality is a right to abortion. So the smaller that number gets, the smaller you need, the smaller reason becomes that you need abortion.
And they have in the past also put forward this notion that women are dying due to illegal abortions, yes?
Yes.
But the new figures don't reflect anything. They simply don't.
Well, the interesting thing about the new report is the new report doesn't mention abortion at all. The new report, in fact, says what women need is what women have always needed: basic medical care, but drugs and medicine.
Right. Water.
Yes, yes. And the way that you save lives is this way and not through a right to abortion.
But, you know, the UN, if you talk to people at the UN, and I know you do, they'll tell you if abortion is safe and legal, it will become rare. People simply won't make use of it. Is that what your statistics tell you?
Well, no. I mean, just look at the United States. I mean, on the day that abortion was made legal in 1973, abortion skyrocketed in this country. And it's only come down in recent years for a whole host of complicated reasons. But yeah, when you have legal abortion, abortion skyrockets.
There was even a suggestion that there be a tax on monetary transactions to help fund this. Tell people about that. I was shocked when I read this.
The idea...
And is it just a suggestion at this point? It wasn't agreed upon?
No, it wasn't agreed upon, but it's gained real traction, frightening traction. It's called the Tobin Tax, and it's been kicked around for years and years. And the idea is that the UN wants an independent revenue stream, independent from the donations of member states, so that they don't have to come shaking their cup on a regular basis. And the Tobin Tax is a tax on monetary transactions. So when you go to...
In the international markets.
When you go to Rome and you change money,
right,
they get a piece of it. Okay? And that goes to the United Nations. And so that money is independent money that nobody can touch. Now, I think they had 60 countries that agreed to it this last time. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that they could get something like that.
And the monies would be used for what?
Well, it would go into the general budget of the United Nations and would fund their programs.
Let's also talk about this UN Woman, which is a new division at the UN. It was once called the Gender Equality and Empowerment of Women Office.
Yes.
Now it's UN Woman. Is this any different, or?
Well, it's vastly different. There were a number of UN offices dedicated to women. And what the radical left has wanted for a very long time is to put all of these offices into one single office and get themselves a $1 billion budget like UNICEF. And they have achieved this. It is called UN Woman or UN Women or something like that. And now they are shaking their cup and trying to build up a $1 billion budget. And they will probably achieve it. Will this be an engine for reproductive rights? Probably. The new president of it, Michelle Bachelet, the recent president of Chile, upon her announcement, her appointment was praised by NARAL, the National Organization for Women, all the big-time pro-abortion groups. So they certainly know something about Bachelet that maybe we don't know. So this will be a huge megaphone for women, for UN-styled women's rights.
Not real women's rights, merely moving this abortion feminist agenda.
Yes. Yes.
Let's talk for a moment about what's on the horizon here. What do you see, what does your organization see coming down the pike?
Well, I think we're in for a good 5 years, to tell you the truth, because the Obama administration has already overreached on abortion and homosexuality at the United Nations. And quite frankly, our Muslim friends stayed away from the Bush administration, even on life issues, because of the war in Iraq. So those two things, President Bush is no longer there, Obama is overreaching, the Muslims are coming home to support us on life and family issues. We have a new nuncio at the United Nations who is a true believer in this debate, in this issue. I think that we're in for a very good 5 years in beating back the radicalism of the left at the United Nations. This year of youth, is going to be a real test case on what we're able to achieve. We're under no illusions. We're not going to advance the ball at the United Nations because we're so outnumbered. We measure our success by blocking the other side. And to me, that's a good day.
Ruse, I want to switch gears for a moment.
Yep.
You mentioned a good archbishop. You wrote a piece on Bishop Vajra, who recently spoke at the Inside Catholic Partnership Awards dinner here in Washington, D.C., Dale Hudson's dinner. During that dinner, he made some remarks that got very little coverage, but is really important, particularly at this moment. And he said, statements from the bishops' conferences necessarily tend to be flattened and vague. They often fall by the wayside through what could charitably be called a kind of benign pastoral neglect. And he goes on to say, I fear that there's been such a steady diet of such flattened documents that anything issued by individual bishops that contains some element of strength is readily so roundly condemned or simply dismissed as being out of touch with the conference or in conflict with what other bishops might do. So that the conference is being pitted against the bishop's authority.
That's right.
Your thoughts on this?
Well, I was thrilled with his speech and wrote about it at thecatholicthing.org. My wife used to work at the conference. It was very difficult for her.
In the pro-life office? In
the pro-life office. It wasn't working in the pro-life office. It was difficult working in the larger conference. There's a misunderstanding that a lot of people have that the conference is a magisterium unto itself. And Vajra said no. As a matter of fact, Ratzinger has said
Ratzinger said it, yeah. And John Paul before him in that...
Yes. It is not a part of the hierarchy.
It is not... Apostolus Suos, which is the document that John Paul wrote.
It is not a part of the hierarchy. We take our cues from the Pope, the bishops in communion with him, and our local bishop. And part of the problem, I mean, in my column I wrote about the sort of quintessential problem of the conference was the Presidential Questionnaire. Now, the Presidential Questionnaire was a listing of votes that the presidential candidates were asked to say whether they supported them or not. Most of them were the policy prescriptions of the Democratic Party. And people confuse that with the magisterium of the church when it's not. And so I had a role in getting that eliminated. Diehl Hudson had a role in getting that eliminated. That, in a nutshell, is the confusion that somehow what they say at the conference is the teachings of the Catholic Church. When you should, as Vajra said, look to your local bishop, look to the Pope, and the bishops in communion with them.
Yeah, the charism resides in the individual man, not in this collective aside from the Pope.
Yes.
You know, it's the communion, yes, with the Pope at the head, but not a group of regional bishops coming together. They don't have any particular canonical
Now, there's
authority.
a good role, as Vajra said in his speech for the conference, in helping to translate the new missal, for instance. He said it would be chaotic without the conference doing that work. In liturgical matters, yes. But in the teachings of the Church, you should look to your local bishop and the Pope with the bishops in communion with him.
Yeah,
so it was very interesting, and I'm sorry it hasn't gotten more coverage.
Yeah, I'm going to put Bishop Vajra's speech on. I'm going to put it on my Facebook page for those of you who want to see it because it's worth reading in its entirety. And he said, I would say that the vagueness, whether intentional or not, has occasionally been a cause of concern and even consternation. And he's talking here about the misinterpretation, the broad range of misinterpretation within some of these pastoral statements that have come out. It's the vagaries of the language that allow people to breathe unintended things into them.
It is precisely what we face at the United Nations. They put in vague words precisely so to get consensus, they do. But that works to the left's advantage because then it's like an empty glass that they can fill up any way that they want to later.
Yeah, no, it's really, anytime you have bureaucracies like this, whether at the UN or staff apart from the bishops, which we have to remember, the bishops aren't there in the dead of night writing this stuff.
Yes.
Staff or outside groups are often drafting these documents, and it lands on the bishop's plate, and they have 2 days to look at this stuff.
Right.
And running a diocese and taking care of the fires in the diocese, most of them admit to me, and I'm sure you know, they just don't have time to read this stack of material. It's impossible. Yep. If they're lucky, someone in the diocese vets it for them. But more often than not, the poor men find it, on the doorstep when they land at the Hilton.
Sure, it's like small delegations at the United Nations. They're overwhelmed with staff material.
As always, thank you, Austin. We will leave it there. We'll have you back again. If you'd like to follow Austin's work, and why wouldn't you, go to CFAM's website. He's at c-fam.org. He's also a regular columnist for The Catholic Thing at thecatholicthing.org. That's all the time we have, but until next week, you can find updates and the occasional commentary by following me at Twitter, at twitter.com/Raymond Arroyo, or on my Facebook fan page. You can always find me at RaymondArroyo.com. The prayers and personal devotions of Mother Angelica and the entire Mother Angelica collection are available at bookstores everywhere and through the EWTN Religious Catalog. I will post all of Bishop Vajra's speech. You won't want to miss that. It's on the Facebook page. Until next week, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, I'm Raymond Arroyo. Thanks for watching. Bye now.